born in Parma, Italy in 1949, right after my father was in the war. He was actually a war hero. He spent 8 years in the army, in the Italian Alpine Army. At that time, Italy was under fascist movement when my father was. So he came back from the war. He got married. I was born in 1949 on a little farm, I guess. No running water, no electricity. This was right after the war. Italy was destroyed because of the Germans. As they left, they destroyed the bridges, towns, and left. So he got married. I was born in 1949. I grew up on that little farm. We were called contadini, Italian farmers. So my father had a sister here, and she called. It was like a chain migration, I guess. Okay. So he got called, and he accepted that, and he came over by himself. He migrated here, and after maybe 6, 7 months, he got an apartment on the east side, East 56th Street. I'll never forget that. And he called, and he got us over, and we started our American life then. So early childhood for me was exciting. Living on the farm, pigs, cows, chickens, everything. At that time, you had to know how to live. In other words, you had to know how to survive. You had to do everything yourself. Like I said, there was no, because this was a little village in Italy, Valmozzola, which is a very small town. The only way, those people at that time, there were no roads. The only way they could travel was by train, and to get to the train, you had to use back roads, and you had to walk. There was no mechanization. In other words, you had to work the farm. Agriculture, you had to use oxen. That was your, that was your main engine, I guess, to rototill the earth and everything. And grain was the main ingredient, the main product there, because if you didn't have grain, you couldn't make bread. So grain, chickens, cows, and stuff, so on and so forth. And you had to know. In other words, you had to know how to do it, or else you wouldn't survive. The government, there was no welfare. You know, you couldn't go on welfare. You just, that's the way it was. So my father decided to come over. He got here, and of course, he started here. He got a job as a construction worker. He worked in construction all his life after that. Once we migrated here, we went to school, and we took on the American life then, from then on, and God bless America. There was a 7-day voyage, Andrea Doria at the time, which after a few voyages after that, it sunk with a lot of people on it. Yeah.
Did you know some people that was on it?
No, this was a different voyage after, but it went down. So once we migrated, I'll never forget the Statue of Liberty coming in on the boat and reuniting with my dad. So for me, it was, I remember that because I was like 5, 6 years old at the time, and I wasn't impressed because I was used to being free, like everything was like compact here, cars all over the place, people all over the place. We lived in a flat on East 56th Street where you had it was a walk up. We lived on the 5th floor. You had to walk up to the, and coming here was a very tough time for us to get accustomed to the way people did business and worked here, and my mother then got a job, and so on and so forth, and we struggled out of it, and here I am. We came here. It was 1956. around that year. Yeah. And then my father and mother became citizens, and we automatically got naturalized as citizens. My father came here first. He provided an apartment for us to, he had to find some, and he found work, and then he called us over like a year. I think it was like a year or two after that. His sister lived here, and I guess it was like she called him, and he came over, and that's how the whole thing started. And from then on, and after he was here a while, he got an apartment, got a job. He called us, and we and the family reunited. Yeah, me and my brother. Yep, 2 years younger than me. Yep, he was like 3, I was like 5. Coming from a farm to a city as a young boy, actually picture this: there was no running water, no electricity. Outhouse, chickens, farm. We had dogs and cats, and it was very. I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I was accustomed to being free. I got up in the morning, went outside. My dog was there. Fed my dog, the cows and everything, the chickens. And then we got here. I had to walk up 5 flights of stairs. Live in an apartment. You can't go out. You go out in the street. And my mother was panicking. You can't go out in the street, because there's cars and stuff. So we kind of. It was like being in prison, actually. It wasn't good for me at that time. So then, I started going to school, and at that time, Italians were looked on as, I didn't know how to speak English. I was still a little kid, and we weren't in the clique, actually. You know what I'm trying to say, and we weren't looked on as good people at the time, started going to school and gaining the American way, and things started getting a lot better, and that's why my father migrated here because to earn some money, but his thing was always to return back and buy up more property, and but it never happened. Never happened. No, he made a lot of money here, and he went back, and actually, we went back there for 2 years but we couldn't get accustomed to the Italian way anymore, so we just came back here. We're back to the same area. Then my father, all of us went back, and my father, we couldn't live there because there's no running water. We had to put a lot of money into the place and fix, So what he did is he bought a house down in Fornovotaro, which is almost a semi-city at the time, like a bigger. So we bought a house there running away. It was actually a nice house, but my father didn't like it there, so he decided to leave us there and come back here and go back to work, and then after that, he didn't want us to stay there, so we all packed up again and came back, and that was the end of that. And I actually got on a semi-pro team. I was playing soccer, and they wanted me to stay, try out for Fiorentina at the time, which is another pro soccer team. But my mother said, "No, we're going back," and that was it. So I like to play soccer. Yeah, I was a goalie for the Fornovese, which was Fornovo, which we had moved into. I was a goalie there, and I was very successful. I was only, I think, 16 years old, 16, and I was phenomenal. I mean, we went through like 10 games that nobody scored on me. So then I got a tryout with Fiorentina, and those guys were a different class, but I still could have went to camp. They wanted me to go to camp. This starting now. I think it's going to get very successful within the next 10 years. Next time the World Cup comes here, hopefully we'll have a U.S. team that could, because that's the #1 sport in the world. You gotta, and you don't see people kneeling down. Okay, everybody's patriotic, so that's
beautiful, right?
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You know how it is. It's a national sport. Everybody gets together. See, at that time, I didn't. I was like Americanized, and I didn't know too much about football or anything. And but then, once I started to play, I started to learn, Milan. Then there was Parma FC also, and uh, they came in, Roma, Torino.
How was Parma team?
Parma team at the time hadn't really started up yet. Uh, uh, they were in Class D or something, really down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Then they started moving up, and now they went bankrupt. They're
Oh,
out.
yeah?
Yeah,
It doesn't exist then.
no more.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, they had a brand new stadium and everything. It was really
Maybe
somebody-
start again.
maybe we'll see.
Would
But
you like to be a coach?
would I? No more. I'm 70 years old. I can't do this no more.
Well, you get this in
Why
your
not?
vein. Why not?
I'm 70. This.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
As long
I
as
watch it
you
on
know
TV
you're
now. I
passionate
sit
about
down.
it.
I just get excited.
As long
Watch.
as you're passionate about it, I mean.
Yeah, I still watch it on TV. I watch. Actually, I'm a fan of the World Cup coming on now. And
Did you watch the game yesterday?
yes, I did. I did.
So now that Italy's not in, you cheering for Brazil, or?
I tell you, I like Brazil is very good.
Do you
I
we're
think
gonna
they have a
win?
chance.
I don't know.
I think they have a chance. I think they have a big chance. Also, actually, I started liking Mexico because that's my style of play. I like the way they played.
I haven't watched it yet.
Mexico, yeah, the first two, they lost the last game, but it was irrelevant. Didn't mean anything. But it's a tough pick because the Germans came in and now they got eliminated right away. They didn't even make it to the next round. So.
I'm very happy about it. I cannot hide it.
So, like you say, Brazil, I watched them, and
Do you think what is your guess for this World Cup?
I'm going to stick with Mexico.
Great.
This World Cup, especially, there's been some plays in this cup that I haven't never imagined. I mean, that could happen, and they happen. Like Germany there, coming in and scoring. It was incredible. So I'm I'm like a globalist on this. I like all those teams that play, and everyone brings something to the game. Yeah. So Brazil is bringing a very powerful. I think it's a very powerful team, and they have a really big chance. I think if somebody misses a goal or something, you think they're gonna shoot them, or like the last time, right?
Yeah.
But Germany's out now.
Germany's out, so you don't have to worry about Germany. France,
That's true.
you got France, Italy, England. England, I didn't watch the game, but I don't know. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
Soccer is
Half
fun.
and half.
Anything could happen. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It could be a luck. It's better be lucky than good, right?
Exactly.
So, I graduated. I went to a Catholic grammar school. I graduated that. And from there, I went to high school. I took up a trade in high school. It was okay. At that time, I took up electronics. Then I got out of high school. I went to community college. I have my associate's degree in electronics technology. And my first job was with Litton Industries. They produce systems, like radar systems, navigation system for rockets and stuff like that. Then my second job, I went to work for this company called Royfax, which was in the business end of things. They produced business equipment, calculators. At that time, calculators were very big, and from then I moved on. I went to work for Hunter Engineering out of Bridgeton, Missouri. What they did is wheel alignment on cars, 4 wheels, and they had this machine that you could put on the wheels, and it would give you a camber caster in tow, which would tell the mechanic, mechanics at that time relied on their expertise on knowing how to balance wheels and stuff. But this machine gave him a readout to go to the right-hand side of the wheel and put a weight at 90 degrees, and so that was very good, and I think it's still out there. And after I worked for Hunter for a while, I went to work for Eastman Kodak Company, the film people. I was there for 25 years.
Wow.
One of the best companies I ever worked for. They developed it, and I went into their office products division when I joined them. They first came out with this, it was called the Ectoprint program, and I joined that. The Ectoprint program was, what they did is copiers, like copiers, but this one here, completely finished set. In other words, if you had 9 pages that you put on this recirculating feeder, you drop these into the recirculator, and it would scan all these pages, and then you could have 15, 20 sets come out all stapled and collated. So they were competing against Xerox. They almost got that. They almost did that business. For some reason, they didn't want to do that. I have no idea why. Because I don't know why. So then they came out with the digital camera. They didn't want to go there because that would destroy the film and the film processing. So the big guys up at Kodak said no, 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 no. And that's what happened there. They never, and along the way, then they started divesting of their, they divested of Eastman Chemical. That one, if you had 1 share, you got 3 shares of Eastman Chemical, blah, blah, blah. And then what happened is they sold my division. And I went along with that. And I wound up with Konica Minolta as of late. That's where I got out. That's where I got retired from. But Kodak was one of the better companies I ever worked for in the United States. They employed a lot of Italians up in Rochester, New York. Unbelievable. I wasn't actually in that part of the business. They had, I was in the office products or office imaging business. Like right now, you know, you go over to one of these copiers. Before you couldn't scan to email. Like now you could have 10 pages and you could scan to email. That's the type of business I was in. Anything to do with pictures, because I was a technician at the time. I used to go in and change all the chemicals, you know, and get these processes working, because they did overnight. And I'd never worked with the film business. The film business was like that was their main product, you know. That's.
Yeah, you were like the
yeah.
big
Then what happened was this. Actually, to me anyway, what happened is the Japanese came in, but we couldn't go to Japan and distribute Kodak film because they wouldn't give us shelf space in Japan. So they came in, they started, so Fuji came in, you know, a lot of other competitors. Then the film business started going down here. The processing business was still thriving, but then the digital cameras came out, right? They didn't want to get into the digital cameras for some reason. So that's killed everything. Film business, processing business, everything. Digital is the thing now, and Kodak could have been, but the reason why they didn't want to do it is because they would have had, they could have done the research and development, came out with the product, but then there's no residuals. Once you come out with the hardware, you got to keep coming out with hardware. You have no film to go in there and processing money. So yeah. I used to work for Kodak Apparatus Division up there, you know, and I got to see all that stuff, you know, all those dark rooms that they, you know, how to process film from the primitive state. You know, you take the film out, you go and you process it, you know, and then that was
It's so beautiful.
very nice. But you know, it's getting less and less. You know, it's shrinking. You know, it's hard to find. At the time, we were exploring fast film. In other words, you could capture people jumping, you know, without any, just boom, you know, a second, boom. So, you know, it's a moment in time, right? You capture it, a moment in time. So that was, that was good. That was basically 25 years of my life. The best time? When I went back the second time, we did travel. There was, salt was scarce, sugar was scarce. Things were really scarce. I had a third brother. He was born, he had some kind of skin disease, and he died because there was no medicine. But at that time, there was none of that. So when I went back, when I was 16 years old, those 2 years I was in Italy, I did some traveling. And, I went to Florence, I went to Venice, I went to Rome, I went to the Amalfi Coast. And so Italy is a very beautiful nation. I mean, it's very beautiful. The architecture. So those were very vivid in my mind. Like I went to Florence and Il Duomo. I mean, you just get out of the train station and you see this Il Duomo.
Yeah.
Then we went to Pisa, another place that is still instilled in my mind, which, you had the Leaning Tower. At that time, we went up to the top. It wasn't closed yet. So I went over to, I still have pictures at home that I was at the top waving down. Somebody took a picture. Now I guess they've fixed everything. It's repaired. Now you can still go up there. But actually, traveling like that. But at that time, when my father and mother grew up in Italy, 25 miles around the place they grew up in, that was their whole life, in 25 miles, because there was the only thing was the railroad that came by that town. And to get to the railroad, you had to take back roads, and maybe half a day I could get down to the railroad and half a day back home. So, and the way they made money was to go at these markets to sell chickens or sell some, everything was homemade, cheeses, or stuff, or you sell a couple of pigs, or you go and you do some cattle, and you get money for the year, and everything else was homemade. If you didn't know how to survive, you would just not live. So if you would take somebody, let's say somebody that just got out of school or graduated even college, and you would put them back in that situation, they would not know how to survive. They wouldn't be able to survive because their education means nothing. Because you're not educated how to survive. You would die of hunger, right? What I'm saying, if somebody lived in the city all their lives and then had to go back to that life, and that would be very difficult for them to survive because they wouldn't know how to survive. Because everything, you had to know how to make bread, you had to know how to cook things. That's why the Italian food, you hear, oh, Italian food is the best food. It comes from peasants because they put together. It's all special stuff that they put together here and there, and then they made it so that it was very good for you. I have a lot. My wife makes chicken parmigiana, not the chicken parmigiana you eat in a store, right? That's something different. But she makes that. She makes like the bolognese sauce that goes with. That's excellent. And I like a lot of Italian pasta with clam sauce, and you put in a few shrimps in there, and you chop the tomatoes really fine. You throw that in there. And Parmesan cheese, because the region I come from is from Parma, Italy, which is it's very good. You have the salumi, which is prosciutto, salami, the best. Yes, the best. What happened was that's something. We were living in Manhattan, and this building we were living in. What happened there was that they wanted to build a skyscraper. They were knocking all those buildings down, so we had to move. They gave us they threw us out, so we got an apartment in Queens. At that time, I was maybe 19, 20 years old. So we moved to Queens, Astoria. And my father bought a house in Astoria, And then right after that, I think I lived there for maybe 8 years. And then after that, I got married. And then once I got married, we moved. We bought a house in Waldock, New Jersey. All the people from the area that I came from get together. It's a league. It's an Italian league, so they get together and they have dances once in a while and stuff like that. You know, Valtarese is okay. Let me explain that. There's a stream that comes down between these towns, and it's called Val di Taro. Valtarese is all these little towns along the way, but La Lega Parmigiana is the people that are from Parma. The stream passes by there too, so that's the Valtarese. Is all these other little towns that get together that are on that, because there's big mountains, right? And because the water going keep, the water and these things just keep getting higher, keeps grinding away at the bottom. So it's been there for a long, long time, thousands of years, I guess.
Through the river.
The river, yes.
Yes,
It's like
you like down the river.
sometimes it dries out because there's no water. And in the wintertime, when there's the snows in the May, that thing is big. It comes down, and so that separates a lot of towns from this side and that side. Do I speak Italian? Yes.
Yeah.
Parlo il parmigiano. Provo a parlare un po' il parmigiano. Il dialetto parmigiano mi piace parlare. Al dialetto. See, it's a different type of thing. It's almost French. Menduma a cercare al treno. Dunduma cercare al treno. Where should I go to catch the train? So in real Italian, dove devo andare per prendere il treno? Okay, il dialect is dove per cercare al treno. Oh, porca miseria! Mi piaceva andare a ballare, ma non ero capace di ballare il Valtaro. Non so se sai cosa vuol dire ballare il Valtaro. A very classic. Allora avevo 17-18 anni e mi piaceva questa ragazza là, una bella ragazza. Allora hanno fatto una canzone, un disco alla Valtaro. E allora io a me stesso dicevo, io non sono capace a ballare il Valtaro, ma sono andato con questa ragazza e ho detto, vuoi provare a ballare? Allora mi sono messo a ballare e lei dice, non sei capace a ballare. Allora lei mi ha lasciato andare. Oh my God. Sono stato imbarazzato, sai cosa? Very embarrassed. No, ci ho detto, vuole ballare? Ho detto di sì, allora ho provato a ballare, ma io non ero capace a ballare. Make a long story short, I met my wife. Actually, she's a third cousin. I never knew the first time I saw her. Her father and my father were kind of close, very close. And so we went to a wedding. We had a wedding, and it so happened that her family and our family and that's where I met her. I met her like at the wedding. And from then on, we got to talking, and
she did the chicken parmigiano.
yeah, she did her father, by the way, was a very distinguished chef at the what was that? Jeez.
Nicola?
No, I forget now. I forget. He was very good. He was a chef, and she she knew how to cook. I mean, really good. So from then,
Mangiare bene.
mangiare bene, è tutto buono. Tutto buono. non ci mancava niente, tutto era buono. Allora ci siamo innamorati, siamo sposati, ho un figlio. E lui il mio figlio ha ho preso la laurea, è un software engineer, non so come si dice in italiano, ma è un software engineer, adesso ha una casa, non è ancora sposato lui, ma si è preso, abita in Philadelphia e scrive software.
Nice.
Yes.
Great.
E mia moglie, io e mia moglie adesso siamo tutti soli a casa, una casa grossa,
Una vita buona.
ha una vita buona e siamo ancora innamorati. Donc, the main thing is that we were very, very poor people. You know, we didn't get, we weren't like over here. We didn't get any welfare to stay on welfare and stuff like that. Even today, if my father was alive, he would not accept welfare. We weren't those kind of people. You know, that was a disgrace. In Italy, that was it was very disgraceful. And of course, the church was the main, because in those little towns, the church kind of dictated, you know, that's where the community got together on one day. You know, everybody got together. And the priest was like he was the main person. You know, if you had a problem with something, you would go see the priest or something. You know, he knew everything. So, but my father always said, you never buy anything unless you have the money to pay for it. Never go and do it on credit. I can never forget that. Those were his words. If you didn't have money to buy something, he would not. So that's the way we were brought up, you know. It was, se non avete soldi da comprare qualche cosa, non devi mai andare a credito. Devi sempre comprare con i soldi che hai risparmiato o che hai in banca. Mai a comprare cose con credito, perché prima o dopo li devi pagare indietro. And at that time, you didn't know where your next piece of change would be coming from. So he never got away from that. So when we came back, and after many years, then we went back. Then my parents passed away, so we inherited everything, me and my brother. So the house that my father bought is in the town. You know, it's got running water. It's a nice house, actually, but now it needs a lot of repairs because it's been like 40 years, 50 years now. So the old house, this is the where I grew up. I actually went to 5 from when I was 5. We left there and we came to America, but we redid the house. So there's a bathroom now, and everything's good, and it looks nice. It's very private. It's 1,300 feet of elevation, maybe 1,400. So you have nice fresh air in the Apennine Mountains. So we have that house up there, and it's maybe 15 to 20 kilometers away from the other house that, you know, it's in a little city there, Fornovotaro, which is really, it's like a little town, but it's modern town.
And you go there often?
Well, I try to go there every year. Me and my brother do. My brother's there. Has been there 6 months now. It's going to be 6 months, so he comes back and forth. He's been retired longer than me, so he's got time. He married an Irish wife, but she wants to become an Italian. So in order for you to become an Italian, you gotta start talking Italian.
That's a nice plan.
But after all these years, she still can't, you know, she gets along with a few words, but she still can't speak Italian.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But everybody in Italy speaks English, so, I mean, that's the way it is now. Yeah, everywhere you go, you have no trouble. If you know English, you know, you go to a coffee shop, you go here, you go there.
Yeah.
There's somebody that speaks English. I went to the, down in Parma, which is the main, which is the main, which was his serial number. Actually, we had his serial number from when he went into the army. We gave the serial number, and they came out with all the documents. Yes, under that time, Mussolini was actually was in power in Italy, and there was a fascist movement, actually a socialist fascist movement, and the people didn't know any better. You know, if you're in the countryside at the time, you don't really care about politics. The only thing you really care about is how to get the next piece of bread in your mouth. Okay, that's the only thing you really care about. So he, as a young man, he was just turned 18, and Mussolini already had started with Hitler. He started in Albania. He started the invasion of Albania. So my father got called up on October, actually 2 years before October 28. He did all the basic military baloney, and he was in the 8th Regiment Alpine Division, un alpino, which means to defend the Alps. So those people were special forces. And he got called up, and of course, Albania was invaded, and so they sent military troops from Italy to Albania, and on October 28, 1940 to April 23rd, 1941, he was in the Albanian front. And also at the same time, he went to the Greek front. Right after 1941, from August 8 to 1942 to February 17, 1943, he did the Russian campaign. From the Albanian front, he joined up with Hitler, went all the way to Stalingrad. Okay, so he was in Stalingrad till 1943. And the beginning of 1943, of course, the Germans started, you know, that battle was, Germany was losing. So at that time, King Emmanuel of Italy declared that no longer the Italian forces are going to be with Mussolini's, under Mussolini's orders, and they cut. So as the Germans were retreating, they were shooting all the Italians. And he walked back from Russia, because as they were leaving, they destroyed the bridges, they destroyed the roads. So none of the Russians could come down and get the Germans, right? So they destroyed it. So the Italians that were on that campaign had to walk back. And I think it was only a very few that made it back, you know. So, but he got to Udine, which is a city in Italy, and he got captured by the Germans. And on September 9, 1943, he was made prisoner of war in Udine. So from October 21st, 1945 to the end of captivity in the concentration camp of Brenna, he was December 21st, 1945, he was then placed on unlimited leave from there because the war was over. So that's when he came back. And that's when, after all that, you know, he got married, and that's where we came out, and everything started from there. Oh God, he you know, you hear stories from veterans today, from, you know, just from the Afghan war. You know, they had forget about it. He was the destruction and the famine. You know, and he was both of his feet were what do you call? From the snow and everything and the ice, he was, yeah. So you could imagine trying. He had to walk back from Russia. Him and his friend from the same town actually they walked back. You know, got a ride here and there, but you know, it was actually a walk. But there was no roads. The bridges, tunnels, everything was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. Because of the way the Germans, they were retreating back, and they were destroying everything on the way back. So nobody, so that was to prevent the Russians. You know, they came down into Germany with the Allied forces. You know, they captured. That's where you had West Berlin and East Berlin. the part of it was Russian because they captured half of Germany, and the other part, was Allied forces. And that's where the line was drawn, the wall in East Berlin. Silvio's parents were kind of the same family. In those places where we came from, like I said, 25 miles. People married people within 25 miles. Everybody knew each other. You know what I'm saying? It was very close. Those people. Well, my father had eight siblings and his, brothers and sisters. And my mother also had 9. So at that time, you needed male. You needed a lot of males to work the farms, or else you couldn't survive. So you grew up just working, and that's the way it was. So people were very close to each other. They didn't talk about politics. There was nothing. All they cared about is, getting their next piece of bread somewhere. That's a very miserable time for them. But for me, when I was growing up, early childhood was great because I was free. I could go out with the chickens. I could go outside, and I didn't even have to have any underwear on, it was great. So, and everything, when we moved here, things became very proper. You had to be dressed with the right shoes, things. So you had to conform to society. And at that time, you didn't have to conform because there was no society. Society was the chickens and the next person a mile away or something, the next family. And and actually when my father was born, the house he was born in, there were 2 families living in the house. In other words, it was split, like 2 families lived there, and the farm, that's how they worked that farm. And then after they split it, there's no story. Anyway, that's the way it was, or else you couldn't survive. You had to be born into a big family. So that was it. So my father was considered as every year in Parma, Italy, they have La Festa degli Alpini, which is a northern Italian custom up there because in the south you had the big brigadiere, the guys that rode the cavalry, but the Alpinis were elite. They were part of the I guess the king's army, I would say, because there was the king's army, which is Emmanuel II, I think it was, King Emmanuel II at that time, and then it was the Italian, Mussolini's army, So that was a very bad time. It was a good time actually for a lot of politicians and stuff when the fascist movement was going around because that's where they were building a lot of roads and stuff. He didn't want to see any vagabonds hanging around. It was he didn't like to see people on welfare. He got them all to working and schools too. He started building schools, railroads, streets, things. So things were going good with that fascist movement. But the mistake he made was hooking up with Hitler, because Hitler started. Putting all the Jews in concentration camps. He wanted one race. He wanted people with blonde hair and blue eyes only. If you wouldn't have, he just didn't make it, So, Poland, a lot of people, destruction. The Holocaust, you heard about it. So that was his.
No, I know that.
My father was not he had nothing to do with politics. He was actually taken from the farm, put in a military uniform, not only in the military but in a special forces uniform, and said, "Go and defend the Albanian front." So, go and defend 18, 19 years old, and 5th grade education. Right? But, he was streetwise. He knew, living in the farm and knowing where things come from, he was able to survive it. He was able to survive that, plus, I guess, a lot of, I think, out of all those people in that area, Mormorolo, Berceto, Valmozzola, Solignano, all those little towns that they all gathered up at the same time. I think him and a couple of guys just made it back. That's it. You know, when you're young like that, you know, you think about it after. You're like, when you're young, you don't. I didn't like it when I first got here. You know, my mother didn't like it because she was free also. You know, like you know what I mean, like her animals or. She knew how to do it. She knew how to make milk. She knew how to make butter from milk. She knew how to make cheeses from milk. You know, you had to survive. You know how to make salami. You know how to make prosciutto. You had to make. You had to go and cultivate the farm. You had to get grain to make bread for the winter. You have to survive until next winter. So the heat was no problem because we lived in the mountains and you know, a lot of trees. So you made a lot of firewood for the winter. So if you were one of those guys that you had to go out and make firewood, you had to go and work the farm, you had to irrigate your plants, you know, and there was no running water, so you had to, you know, you had to either depend on the daily weather, or if you had to go and irrigate the plant. And there was no technology as far as agriculture. So what you would use as technology would be oxens. And if you had a good pair of oxens, they were worth a lot of money at that time, you know, because you could cultivate a lot of fields. They put, I forget what they called, a plow on it, and you know, and those things just plowed all the fields. And all you had to do was feed them, you know, no technology, because there wasn't any, there was no roads, nothing like that until after the war. But thank God that we came here, and I don't know what would have happened if we would have stayed there. You know, I don't know if it would have been any better, probably, but not better, but we would have survived. Well, some people stayed, but of course a lot of not in my relatives. Everybody came over. Everybody. You had to know how to survive like that. You just couldn't. You know, a pig was worth a lot of money. A cow was worth a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you needed some money to buy a pair of shoes, you know, you would just have to work for it, or find a way to make some money so you could go to the market. At the time they had a market, you would bring everything to a market and sell it at the market. Yeah, but you need a lot of it, you know, in order for you to stay. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just can't go to the store and buy one piece of meat. Oh, it's organic meat. Exactly. But you got to continue. You just can't. You know what I'm saying? You just can't. Oh, I ate a piece of organic. So big deal. So yesterday I ate a piece of. Today I'm eating meat from the store. You know, it doesn't work. You know, it's got to be the same thing. It would be nice. I mean, in today's world, you have all different kind of niches you could find. You know, if we keep progressing the way we are with technology, and then. You know, mechanized. And now you have, you know, farms are all mechanized. I'm sure you're going to probably see farms having robots on them, you know, doing, and the person would be sitting like in an office like mine with 3 or 4 computers looking at the robots and doing the robotic agriculture, you know, saying, okay, the tractor's going down and picking everything, you know what I'm saying? It's all, who knows? The transition was very difficult at my age.
Transition had to be a big impact.
Big impact in my life, a very big impact, not only from the point where we came and immigrated, but where I grew up in the city, we had Irish families and Italian families. So there was always a rift